Ya'juj and Ma'juj in Islam is the counterpart of the terms Gog and Magog for those of you who are familiar with the biblical text. Now there's a whole lot of mystery still surrounding Ya'juj and Ma'juj, even for those who have studied the topic for years. Starting at number 10, so who are Ya'juj and Ma'juj anyways? Well, according to one popular belief, Ya'juj and Ma'juj are two tribes of the people of the lands of the Turks. Now they aren't monsters or dinosaurs or any aliens or anything like that. They're actually human beings. However, they are said to be very wild and vicious and monstrous by nature. Now they like to destroy things like crops and buildings and trees, just pretty much everything in their path. And yeah, they can be very violent towards people. Very scary group of people. Now one thing to note is that they are not from people of the future. Now they're alive and living on the earth right now. Now one thing that was pretty disturbing I found is that the people of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, they can drink up an entire lake.
They will drink every bit of water that's in it. وَيَمُرُّ آخِرُهُمْ. Now they're coming like group after group, yeah, because there's a large amount of them. So the first amount of them will drink it all.
But let's get serious now. So in the Quran, Surah Al-Kahf, there is a story of a righteous king named Dhul Qarnayn, and that's sometimes spelled with a Z. Now this man used to travel a lot. Once he came across a nation who couldn't really communicate with him well.
He found there a group of people, they could not speak to him. لَا يَكَادُونَ يَفْقَهُونَ قَوْلًا. What this means is they were cut off from all civilization.
But they did manage to communicate. They had a complaint that there were some people known as Ya'juj and Ma'juj who kept causing destruction to their land, and they asked Dhul Qarnayn to help them out. And they said, "Oh Dhul Qarnayn, indeed Gog and Magog are great corruptors in the land, so may we assign for you an expenditure that you might make between us and them a barrier." And that's in Surah 18 verse 94. So Dhul Qarnayn, he made a barrier between two mountains, which to this day has blocked the way for Ya'juj and Ma'juj to come out.
So they said to Dhul Qarnayn that Ya'juj and Ma'juj are causing a lot of evil on this earth. So this means that this tribe and Ya'juj and Ma'juj were interacting with one another. So Ya'juj and Ma'juj are causing evil.
There's also some mystery around who this Dhul Qarnayn actually is. Now the name Dhul Qarnayn translates to he of the two horns in English, and he's most popularly believed to be Alexander the Great. However, some scholars disagree with this. Now some Muslim scholars, including those from the classical era, they have taken on another view which is in line with many modern Muslim scholars who identify him as Cyrus the Great. And this is according to Imam Maududi, who was a famous Pakistani Muslim imam, philosopher, as well as a journalist. Now other scholars have been in favor of identifying Dhul Qarnayn as Darius the Great. So whole lot of different interpretations of who this guy actually is. But the fact is that, hey, Dhul Qarnayn is a figure in Islam that sealed away the people of Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Now it's also believed that Ya'juj and Ma'juj will break free. So how are they going to actually do this anyways? They're trapped behind a wall. Well, you can find some narrations in the hadith relating to this. One passage says, one day the messenger of Allah woke from sleep with a flushed red face and said, La ilaha halal illah. And he repeated this 3 times. Then he said, woe to the Arabs from the evil drawn near. Today a gap has been made in the wall of Ya'juj and Ma'juj like this. And he formed 10 with his fingers. And that's in the Tirmidhi 2187. That's a hadith. Also, there's a hadith that mentioned how they will manage to break through. And the passage says they excavate it each day until when they are just about to penetrate it, their leader says, go back so that you can penetrate it tomorrow. But Allah makes it return just as it was until their appointed time, when Allah ordains to send them upon the people, and their leader says, go back so you can penetrate it tomorrow if Allah wills. So he makes this exception, and that's found in the Tirmidhi 3153. Alright, now speaking more specifically about the wall or the barrier that's blocked Ya'juj and Ma'juj, thousands of years ago the tribes of Ya'juj and Ma'juj were imprisoned behind an iron wall built by Dhul Qarnayn, and many sources stress that this wall was made of iron. And we all know trying to penetrate iron, that's not going to happen easily. But in any case, over the years, many different opinions have been expressed as to the location of this iron wall. And it's believed to be the Great Wall of China, which was built by the Chinese king Faghfur. Also, another belief is that it's a wall in Central Asia near Bukhara, and Termiz in a place called Derbent. And there's another belief that says that the wall is in the region of Caucasus. Now let's talk a little bit about the coming out of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, because this is a major sign in the end times in Islam. So after Isa, Jesus will kill Dajjal, the Antichrist, and Allah will inform him of the coming of Ya'juj and Ma'juj and order him to seek refuge in the mountain with the believers. As Ya'juj and Ma'juj will swarm in the land and keep causing destruction down the mountain, the believers will find it harder and harder to find food and water to survive. And you can find that passage in Riyadh al-Salihin B19 number 1. Another passage says this: the Prophet also told us how arrogant they will become at their success. They shoot their arrows into the heavens, so they returned and died with blood, and they say crudely and arrogantly, we vanquish those in the earth, let us dominate the inhabitants of the heavens. And that's found in the Tirmidhi 3153. Also, another hadith passage says the Prophet is also reported to have said, Ya'juj and Ma'juj are sons of Adam. If they were allowed to come out, they would cause mischief and ruin people's lives, and not one of them would die before leaving behind 1,000 or more of his offspring. And you can also find that in the hadith. Now, on top of being a major sign of the end in Islam, the Quran tells us how the end of the world will actually be signaled with the release of Ya'juj and Ma'juj from behind the wall. The destruction will happen by God in a single day, and that would signal the day of resurrection. So you know, this is like the final event. So remember the hadith, which are the recordings of the Prophet Muhammad that I mentioned, that said that they dig under the wall every night, they try to escape, only to find that every single morning it's restored by Allah. Well, only at a specific appointed time will Allah allow the wall to actually collapse, and that will free Ya'juj and Ma'juj. So this is why Muslims view the belief and understanding of Ya'juj and Ma'juj as something that's very crucial and extremely important to their faith. And the final thing I want to share with you is, we know there's going to be the destruction, but how will the destruction of Ya'juj and Ma'juj actually happen? Well, it's said that Isa, or Jesus, will make a dua, which is making a request through prayer to Allah to destroy them. And Allah will send insects which will attach onto their necks, and they will all die. And that's in the Riyadh al-Salihin B19 number 1. And their final destruction will be the hellfire because of how they continually lived on earth. Another passage says, the messenger of Allah said, Allah the high and glorious would say, O Adam, I and he would say, at thy service and at thy beck and call. Or Lord, the goods in thy hand, Allah would say, bring forth the group of the denizens of fire. And he, Adam, would say, and it would then be said, there are out of every 1,999. It is at this juncture that every child would become white-haired and every pregnant woman would abort, and you would see people in a state of intoxication, and they would not be in fact intoxicated, but grievous will be the torment of Allah. The companions became sad upon hearing this, and they asked the Prophet, Messenger of Allah, who amongst us would be that unfortunate person who would be doomed to hell? And he said, good tidings for you, Ya'juj and Ma'juj will be those thousands who would be denizens of hell, and a person selected for paradise would be amongst you. And that's found in the Hadith, Muslim 222. Dajjal is also known as a false messiah, similar to Christian theology, and also is known as the liar. In the Muslim world, they believe that he will create a great destruction all around the world by deceiving people, as well as other religions refer to this being as Antichrist, to this man, this person. So much mystery around this guy. Okay, so first thing is, the biggest fitna, which is a testing period in history, is associated with Dajjal. It's reported in Sahih Muslim 809a that whoever knows the first 10 verses of Surah Al-Kahf will be protected from Dajjal. And if you don't know, Surah Al-Kahf is 18th surah, and the first 10 verses are as follows. All praise is due to Allah, who has sent down upon his servant the book and has not made therein any deviance. He has made it straight to warn of severe punishment from him and to give good tidings to the believers who do righteous deeds that they will have a good reward, in which they will remain forever, and to warn those who say Allah has taken a son. They have no knowledge of it, nor had their fathers. Grave is the word that comes out of their mouths. They speak not except a lie. Then perhaps you would kill yourself through grief over them, O Muhammad, if they do not believe in this message and out of sorrow. Indeed, we have made that which is on earth adornment for it, that we may test them as to which of them is best indeed. And indeed, we will make that which is upon it into a barren ground. Or have you thought that the companions of the cave and the inscription were among our signs a wonder? Mention when the youth retreated to the cave and said, Our Lord, grant us from yourself mercy and prepare us from our affair right guidance. Dajjal will also be blind with one eye, and the Prophet Muhammad referred to Dajjal as Al-Awar, which means blind with one eye. The Prophet Muhammad also said that Dajjal's right eye would look like a floating grape and his left eye will be defective in some way also. When it comes to the Dajjal's hair, it's cited in the Sahih al-Bukhari 3439 as well as in Ibn Majah 4071, which are collections of Islamic traditions. It says that the Prophet Muhammad narrated a fact about Dajjal's appearance, that he will have very curly hair as well as he'll have lots of hair. I think of Medusa when I hear lots of hair and like crazy looking eyes. The Prophet Muhammad also said that the word kafir would be written on his eyebrows and forehead, and a believer of Allah can spot this easily. This is cited in Sahih Muslim 2933b. And in Sahih Muslim 2934b, it is stated that even an uneducated person would be able to see this and read it. Dajjal also won't be able to enter the cities of Medina and Mecca. It's mentioned in Shah Muslim 2943 that Dajjal, just can't enter into these cities, as well as other hadiths have stated this fact. In Sahih al-Bukhari 7134, it says that the Prophet said, he will come to Medina and find the angels guarding it. So Allah willing, neither Dajjal nor plague will be able to come near it. Sahih al-Bukhari 7125 mentions that Medina will have 7 gates at that time, and 2 angels will be guarding every single gate. So if Dajjal even thinks about coming, the angels just knock him out. Okay guys, so one of the scariest things about Dajjal is that he will have the power to bring the dead people back to life. So according to Sahih al-Bukhari 1882, Dajjal will have so much power that he'll be able to end somebody's life and then make that same person come back to life. Just imagine seeing that. That would be so trippy. I'm calm. Okay. Anyways, it's also stated in Sahih Muslim 2440 that the Prophet Muhammad said Dajjal also will be followed by 70,000 Jews. So he's gonna have a Jewish army. Apparently those people are gonna be completely deceived. There's also mention of water and fire associated with Dajjal. In Sahih al-Bukhari 7130, it says that Dajjal will come with fire and water. Now what would seem to be water will actually be fire, and what looks like fire is actually going to be water. Is that symbolic of something? The next thing is that the Prophet Muhammad said that there will be a small number of Arabs in those days because they're going to run away from Dajjal and seek protection. And that's found in Sahih Muslim 2945a. And the final thing I want to share in relation to Dajjal is that Isa is the one that's going to kill Dajjal after he's sent by Allah back to the earth. So the Prophet Isa, which is the Arabic name for Jesus, is gonna kill Dajjal at Bab el-Lud in Israel, and this is found in Jami Tirmidhi 2244.
Before Dajjal makes his entry, there are a couple of signs of the appearance of Dajjal. In one of the hadiths that was narrated by Ibn Majah, it talks about how the Holy Prophet said that before the arrival of Dajjal, there will be 3 years of famine. In the first year, Allah will command the skies to withhold 1/3 of its rain and the earth to withhold 1/3 of its produce. In the second year, Allah will command the skies to withhold 2/3 of its rain and the earth to withhold 2/3 of its produce. In the third year, Allah will command the sky to withhold all of its rain, and it will not rain a single drop of rain. He will command the earth to withhold all of its produce. During this time, no plants will grow. It's kind of hard to imagine how to live in this situation. Moving on to number 9. A very interesting description that the Holy Prophet gave about Dajjal is that there would be the word kafir written in the center of the forehead near the eyes. If you guys don't know, basically what a kafir means, it means non-believer. Anyone who's a believer of Allah will be able to clearly see the words and recognize that it's Dajjal. In the Sahih Muslim book, there is another hadith that mentions how even the illiterate people will be able to read the word kafir on his forehead. Moving on to number 8, a lot of people were really curious about the appearance of Dajjal. So especially during the time of the Holy Prophet, a lot of people wanted more descriptive appearance, and the Holy Prophet gave a very detailed description. He said that Dajjal would be blind in one eye and called him Al-Anwar, which means one with blind one eye. In detail, he said that Dajjal's right eye will be like a floating grape. It'll be shaking, so it wouldn't be like in a fixed position. In a couple of hadiths, the Holy Prophet gave a small description of Dajjal's hair. In Sahih Bukhari as well as Sunnah Ibn Majah, which are the books containing Islamic tradition and hadiths, it says that the Holy Prophet described Dajjal's hair to be long and curly, so thick that it'll pretty much look like snakes hanging from his head. Isn't that interesting? So one of the scariest things, but yet one of the most interesting things about Dajjal is the fact that he has the power to bring anyone back from the dead. One of the hadiths that was narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri in Sahih Bukhari 1882. It mentions how a man will walk up to him and Dajjal will ask the people that, "If I kill this man and bring him back to life, will you doubt my claims?" And so it says that he will be killing the man and bringing him back to life in trying to get more people to believe that he's the Messiah. So moving on to number 5. No matter how powerful he seems, he won't be able to enter the city of Makkah and Medina despite of how much he tries. This is mentioned in a couple of hadiths. So in the Sahih Bukhari 7134, it says that the Holy Prophet said, "Dajjal will come to Medina and find the angels guarding it. So Allah is willing, neither Ad-Dajjal nor plague will be able to come near it." There was another hadith that I found in Sahih al-Bukhari 7125 that mentions how there will be 2 angels guarding each of the 7 gates of Medina. So moving on to number 4, it was reported that Dajjal will have something to do with water and fire. In the Sahih al-Bukhari 7130, it mentions that whatever seems like water will actually seem like fire, and in the same way, whatever seems like fire will seem like cold water. So moving on to number 3. So Dajjal is basically the biggest fitna in history. In short, basically what fitna means is it's an Arabic word for a testing period. It mentions in Sahih Muslim 809a that if anyone learns by heart the 10 verses of the Surah Al-Kahf, then they will be protected from Dajjal. If you guys don't know, Surah Al-Kahf is the 18th surah in the Quran. Another interesting thing that was mentioned in Sahih Al-Bukhari 3337 is that all the prophets warn the people about Dajjal and its fitna. Because he's the biggest fitna, a lot of people actually pray that, you know, they never encounter this guy. Moving on to number 2, it is also stated in the Sahih Muslim 2944 that the Holy Prophet, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that Dajjal will be followed by 70,000 Jews. The Arabic word that was translated to mean 70,000 was often also used a word to describe a large number of people or things. So this hadith could mean that there will be exactly 70,000 followers, or it's referring to a large number of people or groups. So moving on to the final fact of this episode is that Prophet Isa will be the one to take down the big bad Dajjal. So Prophet Isa, who's also known as Jesus in Christianity, will be the one to kill Dajjal at Bab-e-Lud, which is in Israel. And this was mentioned in Jami al-Tirmidhi 2244.
We're going to be exploring 10 surprising and interesting facts about the devil according to the religion of Islam. So let's start off fact number 10. Who is the devil in Islam anyways? Well, the Arabic term shaitan means adversary, and you know, it's like the English word Satan, and it's used in the Quran in both the singular as well as the plural, and it's often interchangeable with Iblis, who is considered to be a particular Satan or devil. That's like the proper name for him. And because of the disobedience that Iblis portrayed to God, God ejected him from having access to heaven and among the angels and all of that. And you know, we're gonna get a lot more into that in this episode. But this particular figure, Iblis, he tempts Adam and Eve to disobey God. And in that story, he's referred to as Shaitan. Also, sometimes he's referred to as a jinn, giving rise to a lot of different understanding and interpretation about the nature of Satan, aka Iblis, like what's really going on here. But by the way, we're gonna also get more into that later in this episode. But that's just an introduction of who the devil is inside the religion of Islam. Let's move on now to fact number 9. Iblis, as he's called, was also part of God's creation. You can find that in the Quran, Surah 15, verses 27. And it explains that before God created man out of clay from the earth, he created the jinn race. Yeah, specifically it says the jinn race was created from the fire of the Simum. And Simum it's like a desert sandstorm kind of wind. So the idea that the jinn were created by God is also found in the Quran. You can find that in Surah 6 verses 100 and Surah 55 verses 15. Now for Iblis, he was created before Adam and Eve, and he was also present at the time of Adam's creation. And you can find that in Surah 15 verses 28 to 31. However, he wasn't present at the time that the heavens were created. Moving on now to fact number 8. So in the religion of Islam, Iblis, aka the devil, isn't the originator and creator of evil in the world. As he fulfills the role as being Satan, he's simply seen as a tempter who really likes to take advantage of the weakness of humanity, as well as the self-centeredness, the ego, all of that, and really tries to lead people to the path away from God. Next thing that I want to point out is though that angels, they are seen in the religion of Islam as being super loyal to God, and they bowed down to Adam when God told them to do so, but Iblis did not. So this brought up the question of Iblis, like, was he one of the angels or not? Yeah, and this is a pretty interesting point because this is where a lot of Islamic scholars actually disagree. But not just scholars, also Islamic commentators as well. They tend to disagree on this point. Not all of them, but just there's a large amount of them. Now the Quran identifies Iblis as a jinn in Surah 18 verses 50. So some hold the view that the jinn are a type of angel though. Now Tabari, citing the companion Ibn Abbas, he wrote this: Iblis was one of a group of angels called Al-Hin, where the term jinn comes from. They were created of fire. But although there is differences of views about the nature of Iblis, most Muslims do agree that he is a jinn, and jinn is completely separate from the class of angels. Also, according to Islamic traditions, Iblis is known by many different names and titles, such as Abu Mura, which is father of bitterness, and there's Adu Allah, meaning the enemy of God, and Abu al-Harid, which is the father of the plowman. In the Quran, there are actually 7 different accounts about the hatred between Satan and the humans, and this all resulted from his refusal to obey God and bow down to Adam. Those references are Surah 2 verses 30 to 39, Surah 11 verses 11 to 25, Surah 15 verses 26 to 48, Surah 17 verses 61 to 65, Surah 18 verses 50 to 53, Surah 20 verses 115 to 126, and Surah 38 verses 71 to 88. All these accounts, by the way, they differ in length and the details that are included in each of them. Also, Iblis, the devil, yeah, very bad guy. He vows to take revenge by misleading humans. This is referenced in the Quran, Surah 15 verses 39 and 38 verses 82. Because thou hast thrown me out of the way, lo, I will lie in wait for them on the straight way. Then I will assault them from before them and behind them, from their right and their left, nor wilt thou find in most of them gratitude for your mercies. This, by the way, was taken from Surah 7 verses 16 to 17. Now, although Iblis is often compared to the devil in Christian theology, in Islam, the idea is rejected that Satan is an opponent of God, and also it is opposed that there is some sort of struggle between God and the devil. So Iblis might either be regarded as the most monotheist or the greatest sinner ever. And it's also believed that Iblis did not become an unbeliever because of his disobedience, but because of attributing injustice to God by saying that the command to bow down before Adam was completely inappropriate. There's also no sign of any revolt in heaven or war in terms of like all the angels fighting in the Quran. That's not found there like it's found in the Bible. And it doesn't mention that the devil is trying to take God's throne in the religion of Islam at all. Now, according to certain Islamic traditions, the supernatural being named Azazel, I've heard also pronounced Azazel, is by the way viewed as the original name for Iblis, the devil or Satan, and this being was cast down to earth when he refused to bow down before God's creation, Adam. Once he was cast down, Azazel, whose name then became Iblis, spoke through a serpent to tempt Adam and Eve with the forbidden fruit. So Iblis is also considered as the leader of those angels who fought the earthly jinn as well. And in terms of this traditional belief, it kind of falls more in line with the Christian view of Satan. Of course, there are some variations though, but this is not the most popular Islamic view, although it does exist in the religion. And finally, the fact I want to end off on is Satan is not just seen as an enemy or adversary in the religion of Islam, but is also seen as the worst of all enemies of human beings. In the Quran, Surah 2, verses 208, it says, "O you who believe, you shall embrace total submission. Do not follow the steps of Satan, for he is your most ardent enemy." Also in the Quran, Surah 6, verses 142, it says, "Some livestock supply you with transportation as well as bedding materials. Eat from God's provisions to you, and do not follow the steps of Satan. He is your most ardent enemy." Islam, like many other religions, describes other beings that exist in the universe other than human beings. Some beings have various roles and can be divided up into different types and classes. Either way, there are quite a numerous amount of supernatural beings and creatures mentioned in Islam. At number 10, we have the Houris. What are the Houris anyways? Well, they're described as beautiful maidens who await devout Muslims in paradise. There are numerous references to the Houris in the Quran, describing them as purified wives and spotless virgins. And according to Encyclopedia Britannica, some scholars actually give the Houris a metaphoric interpretation. It also has been suggested that the Prophet Muhammad actually reinterpreted angels that he saw in pictures of Christian paradise as being Houris. Moving on to number 9, we gotta look at Buraq next. Buraq is a creature in Islamic tradition that is said to be a mode of transportation for certain prophets. Most notably in the Hadith, we see accounts about the Isra and Miraj, and they state that Buraq carried the Islamic prophet Muhammad from Mecca to Jerusalem and up into the heavens and back in the same night. Now, Buraq is described as a white animal, half mule, half donkey, with wings on its sides, and the word Buraq actually translates to lightning or bright. Number 8 brings us to angels, and these are perhaps the most common supernatural creatures mentioned in Islam. And angels are real created beings, but are generally invisible like most others. They are not divine or semi-divine. Also, they aren't to be worshipped at all. They're just created beings. And angels, by nature, they submit to God and carry out his command without any question. Whatever God says to do, they just do it. And just to give you an example of the size of the angels, well, Jibril, also known as Gabriel, is the greatest angel, and he's said to have over 600 wings, and his height stretches from heaven to earth, and he can move faster than the speed of light, as all the angels can. As a matter of fact, angels are made out of light according to the religion of Islam. Marid comes in next at number 7. The Marid are considered the most powerful tribe of jinn, and the word Marid actually means rebellious. They are the classical genie-looking figures that we would see in movies and stories like Aladdin. You know, when they rub the lamp and the genie pops out to grant any wish that the person may have. And just like we've seen in pop culture depictions, well, Marid, they can change their shape, and they're said to have a lot of pride, and they want to show off to people a lot. Number 6 brings us to the Ifrit. And now these are a powerful type of jinn and are only mentioned once in the entire Quran. And in Islamic scriptures, the term Ifrit is always followed by the expression of the jinn. So we see that it's a type or class of jinn. The Ifrit are a very strong and cunning type of jinn, and they emerge as smoke from the ground, and they form into large winged demon-looking creatures creatures that actually are said to bleed fire. They dwell in the underworld, which is a place of punishment for those that do evil. Ghouls are up next. A ghoul is a demonic creature that is said to inhabit burial grounds as well as other deserted and abandoned places. In ancient Arabic folklore, ghouls are a very evil class of jinn, and they were said to be the offspring of Iblis, also known as Satan, which, by the way, I'm going to talk about a little bit later in this episode. Ghouls are capable of changing form, but you can always spot one of them if you look for this specific sign. Well, they actually have hooves like donkeys, and they aren't able to change that aspect of their figure. Ghouls, they roam the desert, like I mentioned, and they often disguise themselves as attractive women that try to lure people away, and if they're successful, they actually go and eat them. According to the Hadith, an effective method of banishing ghouls is to recite lines from the Quran. Next up, I want to talk about the Shik and Nasnas. Shik is a lower form of jinn. It's sort of like a half creature or like half formed, and so they look very odd, and they apparently go after unsuspecting travelers. And you know, the interesting thing is that it's said that the Shik, they're able to mate with humans. And if they do, well, their offspring is known as a Nasnas, which look very similar to the Shik. Well, they're half Shik, half human. And these Nasnas, it's said that they originate from the Hadramaut region of Yemen. Some Nasnas are described as having wings like a bat. Number 3, I had to include the Qareen on this list. Now, the word in Arabic literally means constant companion. And Muslims believe that Allah assigned the Qareen to accompany every single human being that has been born and that will be born and that is currently living on this planet right now. The Qareen push a person to do evil and disobey God's commands. So, just to clarify one thing, the Qareen, they're believed to incite humans to do evil through suggestions, but they can actually become good. And this has a lot to do with the good deeds of humans that influence the Qareen. For example, it is said that the Qareen of the Prophet Muhammad actually became a Muslim. However, it is uncertain whether or not any other Qareen besides those of the Prophet Muhammad actually have become Muslims or become good Qareen. Either way, we have 2 more creatures to look at. And number 2 leads us to the Dabba, also known as the beast of the earth. Before the end of time, there's going to be a beast that will come out from the earth, and this beast will tell the world to recognize Allah as the only God that exists. Now, the beast will wear what is known as the Ring of Solomon and carry the rod of Moses. Also, those who reject the message of the beast will have the word infidel written on their foreheads. Now, once the beast appears, it's not going to matter if a disbeliever then becomes a believer, because the time for you choosing your destiny, it's going to be gone. And this is according to a hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah. Now, in the Quran, it says this: "And when the word is fulfilled concerning them, we shall bring forth a Dabba from the earth to speak unto them, because mankind had no faith in our revelation." And that's found in Surah 27 verses 82. So this beast, by the way, is actually going to audibly speak to people. That's going to be a big surprise. And number 1 leads us to Iblis. Like I mentioned, Iblis was coming up in this episode. And Iblis in Islam is the personal name of the devil, which is the counterpart of the Jewish and Christian Satan. At the time of creation of the human beings, God ordered all of the angels to bow down before Adam. But Iblis was living amongst the angels, and he refused to bow down because he was made of fire. He's, by the way, a jinn in Islam, not an angel. So he's made of fire, and he was like, no, I'm not bowing down to somebody that is not superior to me. I'm sorry. And because he acted so prideful and disobeyed a clear command of God, God threw Iblis out of heaven, and that was his punishment. But his ultimate punishment is postponed until the day of judgment. And Iblis, who became the ruler of the jinn, referred to as the shaitan, tempt people to do evil and has become the ultimate enemy of all of humankind.